SATIDE, or the Southern Africa Towards Inclusive Economic Development Program, is a collaboration between the South African government and a number of academic and research organizations to help it answer some of the country's most pressing economic problems. IFPRI has been at the forefront of these efforts, conducting research and capacity building in areas such as climate change, energy, looking at the economic impacts of COVID-19, as well as informing policy around much-needed economic reforms.
Some of the key research findings from the work that we did highlighted the importance of renewable energy, specifically solar PV and wind, for least cost power generation in South Africa. The results showed that such a shift would have a significant impact on reducing GHG emissions, enabling the country to reach its pledged commitment. A very important result from this research is that the shift to cleaner energy does not need to come at the expense of economic growth and development. In fact, the decline in solar PV and wind costs means that shifting to cleaner energy would actually be cheaper and less harmful to the economy than continuing to invest in traditional fossil fuels. The research under the SATIDE program also enabled the further development of a very powerful linked energy economic modeling tool that can be used for future research and future analysis, specifically for informing energy planning as well as the development of climate mitigation policy.
There's a few things that we did that are really quite interesting. One of them was sort of matching up hydropower with variable renewable energy and looking how hydropower can balance that. You can, and we're doing it in a number of places now, turn on and off turbines such that if it's windy and sunny and you don't need to generate any power from your hydropower facility, if you turn off your turbines, then effectively these dams become batteries. And that's been something that we've been a part of. This transition is not just about building different facilities and shutting down this facility. It's not purely kind of an engineering problem. It's an economics problem. And what we were able to do was bring together a really sophisticated, and this South Africa has built, engineering-based model of the energy system. So we were able to take a really good look at the energy system. And this model is going to tell you all about, okay, what are your investment needs? What's the eventual price of electricity? How are you generating? How are you trying to deal with the supply-demand balancing problem? But it doesn't tell you about what people who are worried about the just transition want to know. What's going to happen to jobs? What's going to happen to growth? So we were actually able to marry that with the Treasury's model of the economy of South Africa in a way that I think actually is really quite smart. And they talk to each other while they're going.
As with many countries around the globe, South Africa's economy was hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic.
In South Africa and most of the world, we found that lower skilled labor were much more vulnerable to lockdowns and more strongly affected than workers with higher levels of education. What we also found is that South Africa's system of transfer payments helped to insulate, but not completely offset, the negative shock to income. So in this respect, that the infrastructure that delivers social grants to many South Africans did support government's ability to make good on pledges to provide income support during the worst parts of the pandemic. And this is an important takeaway from the type of research that we did. Not only did it help inform a sense of what the different quantity impacts would be, which types of sectors and households and workers would be affected, it did also give a sense as to what kinds of tools were available to be able to deliver some of the relief that government had been thinking about. Through the collaboration with South African authorities, including the National Treasury and the South African Reserve Bank, the results helped inform a change to official forecasts with good explanation of what sectors, households, and workers might be hardest hit, and estimates to the degree of the shock, and what the potential impact to tax revenue could be. So this information, either directly or indirectly through these adjusted forecasts, were used for changes to estimates to taxes, the budgets, financing planning, and also engagement with different investors as well as cabinet and parliamentarians.
What I thought was particularly unique about this intervention was the way that it was able to crowd together very different and very technically skilled policymakers and analysts to help answer a very new and challenging real-world problem. So for instance, from a growth forecasting perspective, we were seized with thinking about the projections in light of the shock and what they might mean. We have our own internal processes through which we do that, but having a reference point to help us give us some sense of whether or not our thinking was on the right track. I think it is very difficult to find a group of people with the modeling capability that these types of partnerships put together. So if you were to look, for example, at just the CGE capability, the SAM capability that IFPRI brings and can crowd together very quickly, that is quite rare. In addition to which, you have an extraordinarily experienced group of people who have worked on answering a great many policy questions and academic questions, but then being able to crowd them together to use tools in different ways and very quickly to answer challenging questions, I think has been one of the unique highlights of working with an institution like IFPRI.
Not only did these interventions lead to policy uptake, but they also generated public interest.
The longer the lockdown goes, the more you're going to start destroying capacity.
The policy that takes form post-COVID-19 is what this research actually informs, doesn't it?
Indeed. So, for example, the large decline in sales, in imports and in income means that tax revenue will come under significant pressure, as we heard yesterday from SARS.
The good news is over the past 10 years, we've seen huge declines in the cost of generating electricity using wind, using solar.
To make a distinction between the impact of COVID on educated workers versus low-level skilled workers. Is there a difference? I thought all jobs were under threat.
Indeed, all jobs are under pressure, however, some more so than others. So for certain types of occupations, one needs to really be at the factory to be able to operate machinery.
The world is moving towards different sources of energy, and South Africa really has an opportunity to move in this direction and not just provide security, but provide security at low cost.